So you actually get multiple benefits from this one license. And, that's just how it is. We really want to democratize being able to run virtual machines and containers and allowing our customers to modernize both their infrastructure and their applications in a single go, in a single transaction.
I'm with Keerthi from Microsoft to talk about probably one of the most talked about topics today in the Microsoft hybrid world, which is the Azure Stack HCI OEM licensing. So Keerthi, welcome back to the show. It's always such a pleasure to have you back on the channel.
Thank you, Jayanth. Very happy to be here again. My name is Keerthi, and I look after everything to do with Azure Stack HCI and hybrid cloud across Microsoft. I work across Australia, New Zealand, and India. If you're selling Azure Stack HCI, come talk to me.
Awesome. All right. So Keerthi, what is Azure Stack HCI OEM licensing and why?
All right, so we'll have to set some premise here. So if you're familiar with Azure Stack HCI, then you would know that the current licensing model is a very Azure solution provider or a Microsoft provided licensing model. There's a few ways you can procure licensing for Azure Stack HCI, and that's either through Microsoft or a cloud service provider or a partner. This works for a lot of our customers, and it's what we have running in the market today. But it creates this one single issue of disaggregating the transaction from a single point of procurement. So, for instance, if a customer would go to an OEM like Dell, HP, or Lenovo, they would purchase hardware from them, but the licensing would be a completely different transaction. Like I said, this works fine, but we really want to reduce that complexity and build the whole thing into one single transaction. So the OEM license is a way to do exactly that. Now customers can procure hardware and they can bundle the license along with the hardware, and it's just one single transaction, one purchase.
Awesome. Keerthi, feel free to share any slide. Do you have anything to share for our viewers today?
There you go. All right, so what you see on the screen now is the three components that are part of the OEM license. And these three components are put in there very intentionally. Now, there is the Azure Stack HCI, the operating system license itself, and this includes everything. This includes the hypervisor, so Hyper-V. This also licenses Storage Spaces Direct, which is your storage technology. It licenses Windows Admin Center for management. It includes Arc by default, and it includes software-defined networking. So that one little box you see on the left, that Stack HCI OS, that licenses the entire hypervisor. The next component is the container licensing or Azure Kubernetes Service. And you would be so familiar with this, right? This is one of our very popular services in Azure that you can now run on Azure Stack HCI. Now, if the customer were to purchase this OEM license, they don't have to license their containers separately. The license is just part of that initial purchase. So for AKS, that one OEM license, it also licenses all of their containers. And then the final component, of course, is your virtual machines, because how would you run workloads if you don't license your virtual machines? So we also offer unlimited virtual machines within the same license. So you're not talking about three major components to run the whole solution, which is the entire HCI solution itself, all of your containers and all of your virtual machines. So all of that baked into one single license. It doesn't get any easier and any simpler than that.
This is awesome, right? So especially, I can see a lot of customers when I talk to, they're in two different phases, right? One is the infrastructure modernization, which is great. Azure Stack HCI runs perfectly for them. Great solution, especially if they're on Azure and invested in Azure, and also on running a lot of workloads on Microsoft technologies, like, for example, Windows Server. Now, a lot of other customers are also interested in modernizing their applications, right? So it kind of goes hand in hand. Really heartening to see Azure Kubernetes Services also packaged in this, just like what Microsoft did for the software assurance as well. A quick question, Keerthi, is AKS is fully licensed? It's completely, or it's just part of the, it covers only so much of vCPUs and so on?
It is unlimited containers. So if you think about the biggest blocker for application modernization for our customers, it's cost. Because typically you would have to uplift the baseline version of the operating system, and then you have to run a container platform on top of it. We just want to remove that complexity completely out of the picture, out of the equation. So the AKS they can run on Azure Stack HCI is unlimited containers as long as the infrastructure can support it. So if they have enough capacity to run all of those containers, that's all they need. That's all they need. The baseline capacity and compute they would procure from their OEM vendor. The licensing itself supports unlimited containers and unlimited virtual machines.
So this is all packaged into a single licensing package sold exclusively by the hardware OEMs.
That is correct. So we have 3 major hardware OEMs that can sell this, HP, Dell, and Lenovo, and all 3 of them can give you this exact licensing along with their Azure Stack HCI hardware solutions.
Hey, this is awesome to hear. The other question that I had, Keerthi, was how different is the OEM license compared to, let's say, customers who have bought Windows Server data center with software assurance?
That is that's a very good question. I think it's important to differentiate the licensing models. Now, this OEM license is meant for customers that either don't have an enterprise agreement relationship with Microsoft, or they have a relationship, but they would prefer to just CapEx their license, so just purchase the whole thing upfront. There are a few differences between the OEM license versus the software assurance license versus even the cloud solution provider DC license. There's 3 variants we offer. I do have a slide for that if you'd like to have a look.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Feel free to share.
All right, so give me one more second. Sharing again. All right, here we go. So what you see on the screen is 3 different types of licensing we offer for Azure Stack HCI. And you will see it's more or less the same. It balances out in terms of what each of these licenses can offer. The biggest difference with software assurance and both the CSP subscription license is the end customer can lift that license out of the hardware and put it somewhere else. So they can put it into a different HCI license box, or they can move it into the cloud, or they can just repurpose a license to run regular Windows Server data center. This really decouples the support system as well, because Microsoft, they would have that relationship with either Microsoft or a CSP cloud solution provider. With the OEM license, the biggest difference is the license lives and dies with the hardware. It is meant to be alive as long as the hardware is alive. Now, this also means there are no automatic transfer rights, and that is by design. We want our customers to be able to procure the license with the hardware, and when the hardware expires, you either renew the license along with the hardware, or you just purchase net new infrastructure with new license. That is the main difference. But the benefit you get with that is the unified support system. So when I say unified support, it's not unified Microsoft support, but if you were to go to an OEM vendor and you purchase the OEM license, the vendor will provide your level 1, level 2 support because they now own the transaction relationship of that license. So for our customers, it is a single point of contact for any support issues, whether that's with Dell, HP, or Lenovo, as long as they've purchased the license from that OEM itself. So those are the main differences between the software assurance license versus the OEM license. They will also be priced differently, and then it really does come down to the budget that our customer has and what kind of operational model they'd like to run under. Would they like to purchase upfront, or would they like to have like a recurring, either annually or monthly pay-as-you-go kind of purchase?
This is great. I think this really aligns well with a lot of customers that I've spoken to so many customers in the region. One of the things that they say is, hey, you know what? I don't have software assurance, neither do I have enterprise agreement. So what's the option in that case? So we generally used to, redirect those customers into, hey, go talk to Microsoft sellers and get them, ask them to quote and a software assurance licensing for you. So that kind of shortens the route now because the OEM can deal with it as a single point of contact. That is great.
Indeed, it does reduce a bit of that purchasing hassle for the customer. I have had complexities in the past where someone's willing to adopt the hybrid cloud technology, but they just weren't sure where to get the licensing from. So they would have to knock on a couple of doors to get the licensing. They don't have to do that anymore. They can just get it along with the hardware and they know it's just going to work.
Awesome. Thumbs up again. Going back to the next question, Keerthi. So, Azure Stack HCI supports, I think there are 3 different categories of solutions that hardware OEMs can sell today. So this OEM licensing, does that apply to any particular variant or a particular category of a solution, or it applies to all 3 of them, which is integrated, validated, and premier solutions?
Yep. Really good question. So we've sort of left this up to the OEMs to figure out what their preference or go-to-market is. You can definitely get the license with the premier solutions as well as the integrated solutions. The validated solutions, I believe, are work in progress. So we know there is a bit of a demand to procure these validated solutions with the license baked in. For all I know, it might even be live. So we were working on this since about a couple of months. So it really does come down to the OEM you're talking to, and it's a question you need to point into the OEM. So let's say Dell, for instance, does the licensing on premier solutions as well as integrated solutions. HP does it for integrated solutions and validated solutions. So it's a good idea to have a chat with the OEM to see what their stance is on the licensing, and then go through that procurement process.
Okay, that's awesome. Now, can customers, get this OEM licensing after, let's say, they purchase the nodes or something? In other words, can they do it a POS after the point of sale?
After point of sale. There is a very unique way we inject or we, activate the HCI hardware on the license, and that is done by actually injecting the license into the BIOS of the hardware. It is a marker that goes into the BIOS. And so when the system boots up, it boots up with the OS, but it also boots up with the operating system itself. That means the purchase and the installation of the license needs to be done at the point of sale. So if a solution is shipped out and there is no license attached, it cannot be done after point of sales because there is simply no way to go into the BIOS and add a license into the BIOS. We've done this intentionally because we want to move away from all of these key management systems and USBs and CD drives and license codes. We want our customers to just be able to turn the system on and have the server licensed already. So we inject the license at factory, so there is no additional steps for the end customer. But that also means once the hardware has shipped, there is no way to retro inject that license into the hardware.
Oh, okay. So which means it's actually it's all packaged in the factory itself through a specialized mechanism where it's actually embedded into the BIOS, is what you're saying.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, awesome. Now, the other question that I had, Keerthi, is now, how do I validate if, let's say, a customer has an active OEM license or not? Because it's all there in the factory. So is there a way to quickly check maybe in the Azure portal or within Windows Admin Center as to whether the customer has the OEM license? Yeah, okay, you're showing something.
Yeah, right. I have exactly the visual you need to get clarity on it. So like I said, there is no extra steps for activation. We actually use Azure in a way like the key management system. So essentially, if a customer orders the hardware and the OEM ships it out with the license, they would drag it, stack it, cluster it, and then they will put in their Azure account or subscription to connect into Azure. Azure then looks into the hardware and it goes, oh, I've got a license here, and that is the OEM license. So it is very black and white for the customers. If you look on the screen, it clearly says the license type is the OEM license. And it also says this solution has been pre-purchased with the Azure Stack HCI OEM license. And so the hypervisor, the Windows Server, virtual machines, and containers are prepaid and will not recur any charges in Azure itself. So for the customer, they just need to go into the configuration portal, configuration screen in the Azure portal, and it tells them what kind of license they're using. So there is no room for doubt here.
Okay, it's all pretty transparent and tells you exactly what the licensing covers and type of licensing and everything. Yep. This is fantastic, fantastic. All right, so moving on to the next question, Keerthi. I want to give you a scenario where a customer has already purchased a particular generation in the model of a server, and they obviously have applied software assurance licensing on top of it. So let's say they buy the next bunch of hardware and they decide to go with OEM licensing. Now, my question is, can they mix the same model? They're ordering a similar model of this, of the server, just as an expansion, for example. Consider expansion as a scenario here. Now, can they go ahead and add those OEM license nodes into the existing cluster?
Very good question. As of today, so we, let me share my screen so your audience has something to focus on.
Sure.
But, I can take this a long-winded way. I can give you a very short answer as well. In short, we call this a mixed mode scenario. It's when you mix licensing types within the same cluster. As of today, we don't support that because for Azure, there needs to be a consistent licensing version or licensing method inside the single cluster. So if there are mixed license versions, so let's say there is the OEM license and there is the software assurance license within the same cluster, Azure will default the whole thing into pay-per-use. So it will default into the $10 per core licensing model. So it is, as of today, not possible to mix the licensing modes within the same cluster. But a simple workaround to that is to split that out into different clusters. So you could have one cluster running software assurance, the second cluster running the OEM license, and you can all link that up into Azure Arc, go into the Azure portal and manage that across clusters from a single portal. So as of today, mixing licensing within the same cluster, not possible. But is that going to be a deal breaker? I don't think so. You can still, and that is the beauty of hybrid cloud and the power of Azure Arc, right? It doesn't matter how many clusters or how many nodes you have in a cluster, you should still be able to manage your entire infrastructure from a single pane of glass. So that is a good workaround for that scenario. But mixing licensing types within the same cluster will just default it into the pay-per-use licensing model.
Yeah, thanks for the insight. Just also for the viewers, watching this, watching this video, it's important to understand that the Azure Stack HCI rule of thumb, everything needs to be homogeneous. That includes the hardware, the Azure Stack HCI operating system versions that you run on it, and that includes now the licensing model as well. Is that right? Okay.
Super relevant. I actually haven't considered it that way, but yes, having a homogeneous configuration across your drives, your node itself, and your licensing, that makes perfect sense.
Okay, awesome. Now, how do customers buy this OEM license? Do they just directly go to the OEMs and say, I want an OEM license? Is that simple?
That's it. That's basically it. And that's the beauty of this licensing model, right? Let's say they have an incumbency with one of the OEMs. They just go to the OEM and say, I have an Azure Stack HCI requirement and I need the licensing from you. And the OEM will do the rest. They will do the sizing and the scoping, and they will also attach the license with the hardware. So there is nothing else. There's no other complexity. They don't have to speak to anyone else. The OEM representative working with the customer will be able to provide the licenses to them.
Fantastic. All right. Now, Keerthi, the other question that I had was, you were showing on the screen that it supports Windows Server 2022 guest VMs, unlimited guest VMs for Windows Server 2022. Recently, as on November 1st, Windows Server 2025 was released as well. So a lot of customers are super excited about getting their hands onto Windows Server 2025 and probably doing an upgrade to Windows Server 2025. Now, the question that I have is, does the OEM license support seamless upgrade to Windows Server 2025 as well?
All right. Very good question again. So there's two components in the solution, right, that will potentially require upgrades in the future. One is the HCI, the operating system itself, the baseline OS, and then the Windows Server Guest Virtual Machine OS. The baseline HCI OS is always up to date, always alive. So no matter what kind of license a customer procures, including the OEM license, the baseline operating system will always stay up to date. So every time you release a major version for the OS, it's automatically made available to the customer. The guest virtual machines are a different story. They are static. So whatever version's running that year is the version a customer would get. So in this case, it would be Server 2025. Now, if there is a requirement to upgrade in the future, we will make an upgrade package available just for the guest virtual machines. And that's the only package they'll need because everything else stays up to date anyway. AKS is Microsoft Managed Service, so that's going to stay up to date as well. So the Windows virtual machines will be, upgraded based on a package basis. So we will just release new upgrade packages when they're available.
Okay, that's great. So Keerthi, Keerthi, one last question before we kind of, sum this up. Do you want to just quickly summarize what is OEM licensing on Azure Stack HCI?
Yep. The simplest way to remember is just one-stop shop to procure your hardware and your software licensing from a single vendor, from a single OEM vendor, as the name suggests. It includes everything you need to be able to run a fully performant, fully functional, hypervisor-based hybrid cloud platform. And so that gives you the rights to run a Microsoft hypervisor, software-defined everything, storage, networking, everything, unlimited virtual machines, unlimited containers, and don't forget, with every Azure Stack HCI solution, you get free extended security updates as well. And that is also included as part of this OEM license. So you actually get multiple benefits from this one license. And, that's just how it is. We really want to democratize being able to run virtual machines and containers and allowing our customers to modernize both their infrastructure and their applications in a single go, in a single transaction.
That is fantastic, Keerthi. Keerthi, I want to really thank you and appreciate for coming on this YouTube channel and giving so much of insights about OEM licensing on Azure Stack HCI. There's so much to digest. Thank you so much.
Of course, it's my absolute pleasure, and I'm happy to be here anytime. Thank you, Jayanth.
Thanks, Keerthi. So, thank you so much for everyone to watch this episode. I hope you really enjoyed watching all the questions that I had for Keerthi, and I think she kind of trumped it. She answered pretty much all of them. If you have additional questions that you still think are unanswered, maybe feel free to put them in the comment section. Maybe I can just try and answer them in the video in the next videos, if possible, Keerthi. I think we should do that. Until then, if you like this video, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.